14 years. That's how long I gave to that company. 14 years of showing up early, staying late, fixing other people's mistakes, mentoring new hires, and sacrificing weekends. All because I believed in loyalty, in being a team player. I believed that if I just worked hard enough, they'd see me. They'd value me. I was wrong. It happened on a Tuesday. I remember because I'd just finished training the new associate manager, my third one in the past 5 years. They always came in cocky, clueless, and left a few months later when things got tough. I was the one holding everything together, but this one was different. He was young, confident in that rehearsed way, and had a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I didn't trust him, not from day one. That afternoon, I was called into a meeting, HR, my director, and him. No agenda, no heads up. Just a bland email. Quick sync at 3 p.m. That phrase still makes my stomach turn. When I sat down, I already felt the tension. HR looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. The director didn't meet my eyes. And the new guy. He smiled. "We've been reviewing operations and restructuring the department," my director began, reading from a script. "As a result, we'd like to offer you the opportunity to transition to a remote support role, effective immediately." I blinked. "What?" "It's a great opportunity," the new guy chimed in, all smiles. "You'll get to work from home, less stress, more flexibility." I didn't hear the rest. My mind buzzed, ears ringing. Remote support? After 14 years in leadership? After running the department when my boss disappeared for weeks? After bailing out the company? During the merger, after training people who went on to get promoted above me? They were pushing me out. It wasn't a promotion. It was a demotion with a shiny bow on it. "We really hope you'll consider this," HR added, her voice rehearsed and hollow. "Of course you can take a day or two to decide, but the restructure is non-negotiable." I sat there in stunned silence, the blood rushing to my face. I had seen others get quietly edged out. The company had a way of doing it without ever using the word fired. They'd just make it unbearable, undignified. And here I was, next in line. I wanted to scream. 14 years, all of it wiped clean with a corporate smile and a great opportunity. I stood up slowly, calmly. "Thank you," I said. "You've made my decision very easy." I walked out of that room, went straight to my desk, and shut down my computer. I didn't cry. Not yet. Not until I reached the elevator and the doors slid shut, sealing me in that small steel box with the rising pressure in my chest. By the time I reached the parking lot, it hit me like a flood. Rage, grief, shame. How would I let this happen? I'd given them everything, every ounce of myself, and they discarded me like an old office chair. But that feeling didn't last long. Because beneath the grief, something else stirred, something fierce. They thought they could shove me into a corner and I'd quietly disappear. They thought they could rewrite my worth and I'd just nod and accept it. They had no idea who they were dealing with. This wasn't going to be the end of my story. It was the beginning. The promotion. That wasn't meant for me. The days following my so-called opportunity were a blur of disbelief and quiet fury. I hadn't given them an answer. I didn't need to. My silence spoke volumes. I didn't open the company laptop. I didn't respond to HR's gentle reminder emails. I wasn't going to validate the insult they tried to pass off as a favor. What hurt most wasn't the demotion. It was the lie behind it. The manipulation. They'd planned it. All of them. The young associate manager, Landon. Now I saw it. The way he'd started sitting in on leadership calls to learn, the random check-ins with staff, the subtle way he started excluding me from key meetings just weeks before. It was deliberate, calculated. And I, blinded by my sense of loyalty and routine, hadn't seen it coming. But what shattered me completely was what I found out next. A friend of mine, Monica, still worked in finance. We weren't close, but we'd had lunch a few times, shared frustrations about corporate games. 2 days after the offer, she messaged me privately. "I don't know if you've heard, but they're announcing Landon as Director of Operations on Monday. Just wanted you to know. I thought you were next in line." I read that message 3 times. My stomach dropped. Director. My role. The one I had been unofficially doing for the last 2 years while my manager slowly faded into irrelevance and collected a check. They hadn't just sidelined me. They'd replaced me. They used me. They let me train my own replacement while stringing me along with promises of soon, next quarter, hang in there. I was never going to be promoted. They never had any intention of letting a woman in her mid-40s lead a department already leaning toward a younger, more dynamic image. I had given them 14 of the best years of my life, and they had used every one of them as a stepping stone for someone else. The worst part? I had ignored the signs. The way Landon's ideas, ones I had floated in meetings, suddenly became the fresh thinking the department needed. The way leadership meetings shifted from brainstorming to becoming thinly veiled audits of my performance. The way HR had once subtly suggested I update my resume, just in case restructuring hits our team next year. It had all been leading to this. I was a cost to be cut, a legacy leader to be phased out, while they packaged the change as a strategic pivot. A cleaner, younger face would carry the title I had spent years working toward. All while I was shoved into a corner, with a cheap headset and a remote login. No, I wasn't going to take it, but I wasn't going to storm into the office screaming either. That's what they expected. Emotional outbursts, angry emails, a dramatic exit they could use to justify their decision. No, I was going to do something worse. I was going to watch. I started paying attention, quietly. I didn't quit right away. Not yet. Instead, I began logging everything. Emails, meeting notes, policy violations, patterns. I knew this company inside and out. I knew their weaknesses, and if they thought they could walk away from this unscathed, they were about to learn how wrong they were. They had underestimated the one person who kept their house of cards from collapsing. And now I was going to bring the whole thing down, one move at a time. It wasn't just about me anymore. For days, I replayed the meeting in my head like a looped nightmare. But as the sting of betrayal settled into something colder, sharper, I realized something. This wasn't just about a promotion I didn't get. It wasn't even about Landon or that smug HR script. It was about a system that takes loyalty and wrings it dry. That exploits experience until it becomes a liability. That discards the very people who built the foundation it now dances on. I wasn't just angry for me anymore. I was angry for everyone like me. For Angela, who was let go after 18 years because her role was no longer aligned with company goals. For Rob, who trained his replacement only to be laid off 2 weeks later. For Danny, who was passed over for leadership because she took maternity leave. Twice. We were all seen as expired assets, disposable, replaced by flashier, cheaper, hungrier versions of ourselves. But there's something those execs never understood. We remember everything. We know where the bodies are buried, figuratively speaking. We know who fudged reports during quarterly reviews, who billed hours they didn't work, who promoted their golfing buddy despite HR complaints buried in emails marked confidential. I remembered it all. And I remembered what this job had cost me. My son had been 6 when I first took this role. He's now 20. I missed soccer games, parent-teacher conferences, weekend trips because someone always needed me. I remember answering calls from the ER waiting room while my mother had surgery. I remember skipping Christmas dinner 2 years in a row to manage system outages. Also, they wouldn't think I was replaceable. And yet, here I was. Worse than replaced, dismissed. And what made it unbearable was the final straw that landed. 2 days later, in the form of a glossy company-wide newsletter, meet our new director of operations, Landon Gray. There he was, posed with a fake smile in front of the office mural I helped design 3 years ago. The write-up praised his visionary leadership and rapid understanding of company culture. It was as if I had never existed. No mention of me, no thanks, no transition acknowledgement. I wasn't just erased. I was erased with precision. That was the moment something in me snapped into focus. I knew people respected me. Even now, I still got texts from staff asking what was really going on. Is this permanent? Are you okay? Why didn't they let you lead the team? They saw the injustice. They just didn't know how deep it went. But I did, and I was going to use that. Because here's the thing. When someone works somewhere for 14 years, they don't just walk away empty-handed. They walk away with stories, with receipts, with knowledge of every hidden crack behind the company's polished surface. I had access to old documentation, outdated but still technically valid compliance memos, unaddressed harassment complaints. I'd seen swept under the rug, misfiled budget items, unethical hiring decisions, performance review discrepancies. All the things Landon and his protectors didn't even know existed. But I knew. And I had the receipts. This mattered because if they could do it to me, they could do it to anyone. They were doing it to others. And someone had to draw the line. Someone had to say, enough. If they wanted a clean break, they were about to find out how dirty their hands really were, and I was going to show them, not out of spite, but out of principle. You don't get to write me out of the story I helped build. You don't get to bury me, not without the whole truth coming back to the surface. If they wanted war, I'd give them strategy. By the time Monday rolled around and Landon took his first official department-wide meeting as director, I already had the outline of my plan drawn out on a legal pad. I didn't need to rage or throw tantrums. That's what they wanted, to paint me as bitter and difficult. No, I'd do what I'd always done, play the long game. Only this time, I wasn't protecting their image. I was exposing it. The first step? Gather proof. Quietly, legally, carefully. I still had access to internal systems. They hadn't locked me out, which told me everything I needed to know about how arrogant they were. They thought I'd either accept the remote role or walk away, tail between my legs. What they didn't count on was me staying silent and watching. I went into old archived emails, ones most people forgot even existed, and started pulling everything. Training memos, HR complaint logs, budget spreadsheets, all of it. I flagged discrepancies, like the one from 2 years ago when our team was told bonuses were canceled due to budget cuts, but a week later, a VP bragged in a meeting about using leftover funds to upgrade his executive office suite. I took screenshots, compiled them, created a timeline. I knew just enough to protect myself legally, but I made sure every document was dated, every source traceable. Step 2. Talk to people, off the record. I reached out to former employees, Angela, Danny, Rob, all people who'd been restructured, reassigned, or off-boarded under suspicious circumstances. They had stories, records, emails they had saved. All of them were too scared to go public. But when I told them I was building something, and I meant to hold the company accountable, they began to share. One story from Rob stood out. He'd filed a complaint about racial discrimination 2 years ago that mysteriously disappeared from his record when he asked about its status. Angela had evidence she was asked to train a temp who later replaced her at half her salary. I wasn't the only one they'd tried to erase. Step 3. Map out the weak points. The company loved its image. They prided themselves on being progressive, inclusive, employee-centered. I had sat through so many of those branding meetings, watching them craft language that painted them as compassionate leaders. Meanwhile, they were actively sidelining older employees, especially women, replacing them with younger men who had all the polish and none of the experience. I began collecting all the contradictions. The official, company policy versus the actual behavior. Statements made during public town halls that directly contradicted internal communications. It was all right there, waiting to be exposed. Step 4. Find leverage. I didn't want to sue them, yet, but I needed them to feel the pressure. So I reached out to a journalist I'd met during a networking event years back. She worked for a small but scrappy online investigative outlet, the kind that loves stories about corporate corruption cloaked in family values. I sent her a short email. I was recently pushed out of my leadership role after 14 years under the guise of a remote opportunity. I have documents, timelines, and corroborating testimonies that point to a pattern of discriminatory restructuring practices. Let me know if you'd like to talk. She responded within 2 hours. And suddenly, this wasn't just my story anymore. Step 5. Time my exit. Perfectly. I knew that resigning in silence would hand them everything. So I planned to leave loudly, but with facts, not drama, not emotion, just cold, hard, documented truth. The kind that can't be spun away in a newsletter. They thought they had buried me. They didn't realize I'd been taking notes from the grave. And now I was about to rise up, with names, receipts, and a plan that would show them exactly who they underestimated. The reckoning begins. Once the plan was in motion, every move I made was deliberate. No wasted energy, no second guessing. I was done doubting myself. I was focused, calm, dangerous. The first thing I did was submit my formal resignation, but not just any resignation. I crafted a letter that read like a report, professional, clear, deadly. After 14 years of dedicated service, I am resigning from my position, effective immediately. The recent restructuring offered under the guise of a promotion does not align with my contributions or qualifications. I am disappointed by the Company's pattern of removing senior, experienced staff members through manipulative tactics that border on discriminatory. Please consider this my formal notice, and also notice that I am retaining legal counsel to review what I believe may be violations of internal policy and federal employment protections. All communication going forward should be directed accordingly. I CC'd HR. I CC'd my director. I even CC'd the company's general counsel and one board member I'd worked with on a diversity task force 3 years ago. No one replied, but my access was revoked within the hour. That told me everything I needed to know. They were scared. Next. Step. I met with a journalist. We sat in a quiet cafe 2 towns over, her phone off, notebook open. I gave her everything: names, timelines, documents, even chat logs from internal employee channels. She was stunned by how organized I was. I told her it wasn't just rage fueling me, it was purpose. I introduced her to Rob and Angela. She interviewed them both. The story grew. She dug deeper, pulling public records, reading Glassdoor reviews, even interviewing former interns who remembered the same names coming up again and again in complaints that mysteriously disappeared. 3 weeks later, she sent me the draft. The faces they forgot, inside the quiet purge of a corporate giant. It was brutal, beautiful, honest. She asked if I wanted my real name used. I said yes. It went live on a Thursday morning. By 10 a.m., the company's name was trending, for the wrong reasons. Then came the emails. Former coworkers, ex-employees, even clients. You said what we couldn't say. I'm proud of you. I always wondered what happened to Angela. Thank you. Then came the fallout. The company issued a statement full of vague corporate fluff. We are committed to equity and inclusion. We take these allegations seriously. But it wasn't enough. Not this time. Because the journalist didn't just publish my story, she published the evidence. Screenshots, quotes, timeline breakdowns. A full map of the rot beneath their polished veneer. The article sparked an internal audit. Voluntary at first, then mandated when employees began to circulate a petition for an independent investigation. I wasn't done yet. I filed a complaint. With the EOC, attaching the article, the documents, and the resignation letter, they opened an inquiry. I knew it would take time, but just having it on record was a power move. But the real blow came 2 weeks later. An old colleague forwarded me an email. Due to recent developments, Landon Gray is no longer with the company, effective immediately. Just like that. Gone. No fanfare. No thank you. The press release was as cold and vague as the one they gave me. Transitioning leadership responsibilities, they said. I couldn't help but smile. Because the truth had done what my loyalty never could. It made them listen. They wanted to erase me. Instead, I became the spark that lit up everything. They tried to keep in shadow. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about making it cost them. The lies, the arrogance, the entitlement. They thought people like me didn't fight back. They were wrong. I wasn't loud. I wasn't reckless. I was precise. And now, I was free. The final word was mine. 2 months after I walked away, I received a formal letter in the mail, thick, embossed with the company logo and filled with panic disguised as professionalism. They were concerned about the reputational harm caused by the article. They strongly encouraged me to refrain from further commentary and even offered a settlement if I agreed to sign a non-disclosure agreement. I laughed. After 14 years of giving them everything, now they wanted to pay me to be quiet. They had spent over a decade ignoring my voice. Now they were afraid of it. I didn't take the money. I didn't need it. I had already won. The exposure had done its work. Landon's departure wasn't the only one. The director who had sat across from me with that scripted speech, gone. The HR rep who ignored Angela's complaint, transitioned to another department. But that was just the start. The story triggered a wave of anonymous employee reviews, whistleblower tips, and even client-side concerns. The board launched a third-party ethics review, something unheard of in all my years there. Their stock dipped briefly after a larger outlet picked up the original article and investors demanded transparency. Their carefully constructed house of mirrors cracked. And the best part? I didn't have to scream to be heard. I didn't need revenge in the form of shouting matches or lawsuits that dragged on for years. My power came from the one thing they never expected: the truth. I got to tell my story. And in doing so, I told the story of dozens of others they tried to silence. A month after the article went viral, I got invited to speak at a virtual Women in Leadership panel. Me, the same woman they tried to shove into a remote support box like a broken fax machine. I spoke about dignity, about speaking up, about leaving when you're no longer respected, and not quietly. I wasn't bitter anymore. I was proud. Because I had turned their insult into my platform. The day I resigned, I felt powerless. But now I saw it for what it really was, the beginning of my freedom. I no longer reported to people who saw me as a threat for simply knowing what I was doing. I no longer stayed up at night worrying about how to prove my worth to men who built careers out of stealing credit. I no longer feared being forgotten. Because I wasn't forgotten, I was remembered. For standing up, for speaking out, for not fading into the background when they tried to dim my light. And the company? Well, it survived. They always do. But now they watch their steps. Now they know someone's always watching. They know there's a cost to treating people like numbers. And as for me, I started consulting on my own terms, helping other women navigate toxic corporate structures, prepare their exits, and build strategies like mine. I even launched a small online platform that offers legal resources, script templates, and documentation checklists for people going through quiet offboarding. Because they're still doing it. Every day, somewhere someone's getting that same fake opportunity, that same HR smile, that same speech about restructuring. But now people are prepared. And when they fight back, they'll know it started. With someone who refused to be erased. I remember the last thing I said in that meeting. Calm, measured, deceptively simple. Thank you. You've made my decision very easy. But if I had one more thing to say now, it would be this. Never underestimate the one you tried to silence. Because when she rises, she doesn't come back to be part of your game. She comes back to break it.